allies, and forsake the cause of heaven and good knighthood? But I will possess my patience, and will not think of them. Only one attempt will I make to keep this gallant brotherhood together, if it be possible, and if I fail, Lord Archbishop, we will speak together of thy counsel, which, as now, I neither accept nor altogether reject. Wend we to the council, my lord, the hour calls us. Thou sayest Richard is hasty and proud? Thou shalt see him humble himself, like the lowly broom plant from which he derives his surname." With the assistance of those in his privy chamber, the king then hastily robed himself in a doublet and mantle of a dark and uniform colour, and without any mark of real dignity, excepting a ring of gold upon his head, he hastened with the Archbishop of Tyre to attend the council, which waited but his presence to commence its sitting. The pavilion of the council was an ample tent, having before it the large banner of the cross displayed, and another, on which was portrayed a female kneeling, with dishevelled hair and disordered dress, meant to represent the desolate and distressed church of Jerusalem, and bearing the motto, Afflicate sponse, ne obliviscaris. Warders carefully selected kept every one at a distance from the neighbourhood of this tent, lest the debates, which were sometimes of a loud and stormy character, should reach other ears than those they were designed for. Here, therefore, the princes of the Crusade were assembled, awaiting Richard's arrival, and even the brief delay which was thus interposed was turned to his disadvantage by his enemies, various instances being circulated of his pride and undue assumption of superiority, of which even the necessity of the present short pause was quoted as an instance. Men strove to fortify each other in their evil opinion of the King of England, and vindicated the offence which each had taken, by putting the most severe criticism upon circumstances most trifling. And all this, perhaps, because they were conscious of an instinctive reverence for the heroic monarch, which it would require more than ordinary efforts to overcome. They had settled, accordingly, that they should receive him on his entrance with slight notice, and no more respect than was exactly necessary to keep within the bounds of cold ceremonial. But when they beheld that noble form, that princely countenance, somewhat pale from his late illness, the eye which had been called by minstrels the bright star of battle and victory, when his feats, almost surpassing human strength and valour, rushed on their recollection, the council of princes simultaneously arose. Even the jealous King of France and the sullen and offended Duke of Austria arose with one consent, and the assembled princes burst forth with one voice in the acclamation, "God save King Richard of England! Long life to the valiant Lion's heart!" With a countenance frank and open as the summer sun when it rises, Richard distributed his thanks around, and congratulated himself on being once more among his royal brethren of the Crusade. Some brief words he desired to say. Such was his address to the assembly, though on a subject unworthy as himself, even at the risk of delaying for a few minutes their consultations for the weal of Christendom and the advancement of their holy enterprise. The assembled princes resumed their seats, and there was a profound silence. "This day," continued the King of England, "is a high festival of the Church, and it well becomes Christian men, at such a tide, to reconcile themselves with their brethren, and confess their faults to each other. Noble princes and fathers of this holy expedition, Richard is a soldier, his hand is ever readier than his tongue, and his tongue is but too much used to the rough language of his trade. But do not, for Plantagenet's hasty speeches and ill-considered actions, forsake the noble cause of the redemption of Palestine. Do not throw away earthly renown and eternal salvation, to be won here if ever they can be won by man, because the act of a soldier may have been hasty, and his speech as hard as the iron which he has worn from childhood. Is Richard in default to any of you? Richard will make compensation both by word and action. Noble brother of France, have I been so unlucky as to offend you?" "The Majesty of France has no atonement to seek from that of England," answered Philip with kingly dignity, accepting at the same time the offered hand of Richard. and whatever opinion I may adopt concerning the prosecution of this enterprise will depend on reasons arising out of the state of my own kingdom, certainly on no jealousy or disgust at my royal and most valorous brother." "Austria," said Richard, walking up to the Archduke with a mixture of frankness and dignity, while Leopold arose from his seat, as if involuntarily, and with the action of an automaton whose motions depended upon some external impulse. "Austria thinks he hath reason to be offended with England, England that he hath cause to complain of Austria. Let them exchange forgiveness, that the peace of Europe and the concord of this host may remain unbroken. We are now joint supporters of a more glorious banner than ever blazed before an earthly prince, even the banner of salvation. Let not, therefore, strife be betwixt us for the symbol of our more worldly dignities. But let Leopold restore the pennon of England, if he has it in his power, and Richard will say, though from no motive save his love for Holy Church, that he repents him of the hasty mood in which he did insult the standard of Austria." The Archduke stood still, sullen and discontented, with his eyes fixed on the floor, and his countenance lowering with smothered displeasure, which awe, mingled with awkwardness, prevented his giving vent to in words. The Patriarch of Jerusalem hastened to break the embarrassing silence, and to bear witness for the Archduke of Austria that he had exculpated himself, by a solemn oath, from all knowledge, direct or indirect, of the aggression done to the banner of England. "Then we have done the noble Archduke the greater wrong," said Richard, "and crave his pardon for imputing to him an outrage so cowardly. We extend our hand to him in token of renewed peace and amity. But how is this? Austria refuses our uncovered hand, as he formerly refused our mailed glove? What! Are we neither to be his mate in peace nor his antagonist in war? Well, let it be so. We will take the slight esteem in which he holds us as a penance for aught which we may have done against him in heat of blood, and will therefore hold the account between us cleared." So saying, he turned from the Archduke with an air rather of dignity than scorn, leaving the Austrian apparently as much relieved by the removal of his eye as is a sullen and truant schoolboy when the glance of his severe pedagogue is withdrawn. "Noble Earl of Champagne, princely Marquis of Montserrat, valiant Grand Master of the Templars, I am here a penitent in the confessional. Do any of you bring a charge or claim amends from me?" "I know not on what we could ground any," said the smooth-tongued Conrade, "unless it were that the King of England carries off from his poor brothers of the war all the fame which they might have hoped to gain in the expedition." "My charge, if I am called on to make one," said the Master of the Templars, "is graver and deeper than that of the Marquis of Montserrat. It may be thought ill to beseem a military monk such as I to raise his voice where so many noble princes remain silent, but it concerns our whole host, and not least this noble King of England, that he should hear from some one to his face those charges which there are now to bring against him in his absence. We laud and honour the courage and high achievements of the King of England, but we feel aggrieved that he should, on all occasions, seize and maintain a precedence and superiority over us, which it becomes not independent princes to submit to. Much we might yield to our free will to his bravery, his zeal, his wealth, and his power, but he who snatches all as matter of right, and leaves nothing to grant out of courtesy and favour, degrades us from allies into retainers and vassals, and sullies in the eyes of our soldiers and subjects the lustre of our authority, which is no longer independently exercised. Since the royal Richard has asked the truth from us, he must neither be surprised nor angry when he hears one, to whom worldly pomp is prohibited, and secular authority is nothing, saving so far as it advances the prosperity of God's temple, and the prostration of the lion which goeth about seeking whom he may devour, when he hears, as I say, such a one as I tell him the truth in reply to his question, which truth, even while I speak it, is, I know, confirmed by the heart of every one who hears me, however respect may stifle their voices." Richard coloured very highly while the Grand Master was making this direct and unvarnished attack upon his conduct, and the murmur of